Now, you're welcome back to the Football Show. Joe Molloy with you this evening. Football Show, as ever, is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We've just had Graham Hunter on the show. Now, very happy to say, Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, is with us. Evening, Andy. Great to have you on.
Good evening. Nice to join you.
We talked a little bit over the last while, and it's felt touch grim around Manchester United, to say the least. I don't want to overstate things and say a big corner has been turned, but maybe they're beginning to go around a bit of a bend.
Well, 2 wins in a short space of time has lifted United from the 7th up to 4th. Wins are wins. They set the mood completely. I don't care what anybody else says. And even though United have not been playing particularly well, since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer lost his job, United have only lost one of 13 games. 8 of them were victories, and that could have easily been 9 had the Young Boys game not been a dead rubber. So Manchester United have been far from convincing, but my understanding is that within the dressing room, there was a big lift after that 93rd minute goal from Marcus Rashford on Saturday. Maybe because 8 of the players were on the way to Dubai for 5 days straight after the game, that they were more happy than they might have been. But yeah, it's picked up a bit, but I still think a lot of United fans are circumspect, and with good reason. I still think this has been a pretty underwhelming season. Manchester City have disappeared into the distance. But United in the top 4, I think a top 4 finish, given everything that's gone on, would be a relative success. There's still the Champions League. I think if the team can get a run of winning games together, and you've got to look at United's next opponents, Middlesbrough, Burnley, 2 more victories there, then suddenly it's 4 wins. And let's see what can come from that, because I get very mixed messages about what's going on behind the scenes. But I was told after the weekend that really gave the players a lift.
Well, one of the reasons for the circumspection of the fans is that the media is flooded with tales of woe from behind the dressing room. Nameless sources. We don't like Rangnick. I've heard, we've read everything from he screams too loudly at us to the tactical coaching isn't up to scratch, and whatever else you're having. I mean, flooded for the last couple of weeks. You mentioned mixed messages there, Andy. Give us the full spectrum of what you're hearing.
Well, if you've got 25 different people, they're going to have 25 different opinions. So someone who's not getting in the team and not getting selected is far more inclined to go and moan to their agent, who may then speak to journalists, rather than someone who is quite happy that he's been selected, that he's playing. So there isn't one view which you can say for absolutely everybody. I speak to lots of different people. I hear good and bad. As a journalist, my job is to find the truth. In football, there's often more than one version of the truth, and people change their opinions as well. So I know someone who was saying that get Rangnick in, it's a no-brainer, has now changed that opinion. And
on what basis?
I know other people whose noses have been put out of joint because they were very loyal to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And from the players' perspective, there's changes to the way that they're training. But again, wins smother everything. So had you asked me a week ago, it would have been different to now.
Okay. And so when somebody has changed their opinion from get Rangnick in to no, let's not get him in, could you give us any specifics or any examples of what the complaints over Rangnick might be?
I've heard complaints over the changes in the people who are training the players. So it wasn't a popular opinion when I wrote this, because it was associated with the perceived failure of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But when Michael Carrick and Martin Pert and Kieran McKenna left, you had the 3 principal people who'd been taking training leave the club. And then you had new trainers come in. They've got the new methods. Some players like those methods. Some players don't like those methods. And various opinions would seep out according to whatever those particular viewpoints are. So as I said, some noses have been put out of joint. I find that in football, when everything's going well, there's a lot of people trying to claim that success. And when it's not, there's a lot of people looking to apportion blame. And then what you also have is players who want to leave the club. Now, they're hardly going to be singing praises because they're not happy. That's why they want to leave the club. Anthony Martial is going to go to Sevilla. Probably good for him, probably good for Sevilla, and probably good for Manchester United if he gets some minutes and plays well, which he's clearly got the potential to do so. But I think fans can see with their own eyes that performances on the pitch have been less than convincing. The formation has been changed from game to game, but it seems in the last couple of matches that Ralf Rangnick has settled on the 4-2-3-1 system, which probably served his predecessor best. As I understand it, that's one the players feel more comfortable with. But he's also had quite a forgiving run of fixtures from when he came into the job. He's got a few more of them, and then it turns into the end of February and March when you have Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Atletico Madrid, etc. So the last week has been a good one for Manchester United, but I've not met any fans who are getting too carried away just yet.
Yeah. And on the training, just as a matter of interest, so Rangnick, the godfather of pressing, I had held an assumption that he might get in there and work them harder in training, for instance. So I don't know, is that the complaint, or what is it about his methods? Because I'm not saying it's all homogenized, but in the modern world where communication is so quick and easy, I would think what most Premier League clubs are doing at training is not, totally incomparable. I'd say it's of a similar vein in terms of many aspects. So what is it about Rangnick's training that some, and I emphasise some, but some players are raising eyebrows over?
Some of them just prefer how it was. I'm not going to give specific examples of what some of them like or don't like. I'm just giving a general flavour of the feedback that I get from what I hear of people behind the scenes at Carrington. Okay,
fair enough. On the formation point, the 4-2-3-1, as you mentioned, seems to be back in vogue. I mean, again, it feels like, especially if Pogba comes back, and where do you fit him into either the two midfielders or further on? That never quite clicked either. It almost feels like, well, this is about the best of an average bunch.
Yeah, I think that Ralf Rangnick has been very honest when he's answered questions about people like Paul Pogba. I think he's quite pragmatic. I think that Paul Pogba may well run his contract down at Manchester United and then may well leave the club. And a lot of fans would say, good riddance to that. Yeah. From his perspective, he's likely to be leaving the club at the end of the season anyway. So he's just going to use the players he thinks are going to win football matches. If he gets in the top four, he gets a big bonus. So do all of his players. My understanding is that while a lot of the players have gone to Dubai, some of them who are coming back from injury may feature in a game behind closed doors this week to get them some minutes. So I think that Ralf Rangnick will choose the best team because he's not got history with the players maybe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has had. He won't be accused of breaking promises. Some of the players felt that what they'd spoke about with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the start of the season didn't end up being the reality, i.e. they didn't get the number of minutes that they would hope for. So players are always going to see it from their own perspective. With Pogba, we could talk about him for 10 hours. He could come back and have a brilliant run of games, or he could get injured again. We just don't know what we're gonna see with him. But what we have seen is an upturn in the form of Bruno Fernandes. He likes that 4-2-3-1. Diogo Dalot's been good. Right back, David De Gea's been excellent. Rafael Varane's looking like a really good defender. Harry Maguire, who's had a poor season, had a good game at the weekend. Marcus Rashford scored 2 in 2. He's another player who's had a pretty poor season as well. So there are some shoots of recovery, but I don't think any United fans are getting too carried away just yet. But it was a good weekend because City didn't win. Other teams dropped points as well. But there needs to be a proper run together to get Manchester United into the top four and maybe have a good run in the Cup as well. A Cup win this season would also be a success. A trophy would be a success. United have not won anything since 2017.
Yeah. Feel free with any of these next few questions to say, I don't know. But I'm just going to throw them at you anyway because I'm sure the Manchester United fans would like me to. On Rashford, the drop-off has been so severe until the last week or two. Do you know what's been going on there, off the field, on the field? What's the story? With
Rashford, I see what I see. I don't see him playing well. I don't have any specifics about why his form may have dropped. I know there was an injury issue, but he's been massively underwhelming. Fans have talked. There's a lot of conjecture around Marcus Rashford. When he's not playing well, that rises and dips. People accuse him of being too focused on what goes on off the field. I think that's a little bit unfair. Again, I hear mixed things about Marcus Rashford. I'm not sure whether he'll have a long-term future at Manchester United, but in a best-case scenario, I absolutely think that he's a United fan and he'd love to be playing well for a United team that are doing well. I think if he's not in the team, then frustration levels start to rise and you start to hear more frustration about him.
Right, okay. Jadon Sancho, in some respects, has been the great disappointment of the season. Arrived to so much fanfare. His stats from Borussia Dortmund were incredible. I mean, he was in the England squad. Admittedly, he didn't get much game time in the Euros, but there must be a lot of talk about what's happened here. Are they surprised? Do they know what's going on? I mean, is he not what they thought he was? Because that's a lot of money to spend on somebody who sees very few minutes.
It's a huge amount of money and he's been poor. Fans invested a lot of hope in him. They were really excited. They'd seen footage of him. They saw his age profile. They know that United had coveted him for a long time, but he's been a huge disappointment. Now, he'll be given time. Other players have had poor first seasons. Ralph Rangnick, when asked about him a couple of weeks ago, talked about the mental side of it being difficult for him. So that's his manager talking there. With the fans, he was coming into a little bit of form under when Michael Carrick was in charge, but he's lost his place in the side. So I know what's happened with Anthony Elanga, and he's been the success of the last few weeks. 19 years old, made a really good impression from the very first training session. I know that he's considered to be faster than Jadon Sancho and Mason Greenwood, and he takes on instruction from the manager who likes to trust players who he believes will follow out his instructions. It's one reason that he trusts Cavani, Fred, Scott McTominay, and Elanga is seen as aggressive, as being very direct. And because Marcus Rashford has not been great, and because Jadon Sancho has not been great, there's a pathway into the side for him, and he's taken his chances. He played really well at Villa and Brentford, less so against West Ham. Although the United players collectively feel that they didn't play brilliantly against West Ham. They also thought West Ham would be stronger, and they were also surprised that West Ham left themselves so open, leading to Marcus Rashford's equaliser. That could be a big boost for Rashford. That it involved Cavani as well, and Anthony Martial, the free substitutes. It was good, and the atmosphere was really good at the weekend. Elanga had a song sung about him to the tune of Rhythm is a Dancer. He was absolutely buzzing off that. He's a kid living the dream. It's quite nice to not see maybe the scepticism, cynicism of some of the older players. But Sancho, I mean, no one's going to be getting rid of him. He's signed a huge contract. I don't think his talent has just disappeared, but it seems to me that his confidence level is a lot lower than it should be, and his form is not justifying him starting in the team. It's a great shame. There's a parallel with Memphis Depay. You know, he came in, everyone was really hopeful that he'd do well. I spoke to people in Holland, just as we spoke to people in Germany who'd been watching Jadon Sancho all the time, and it's just been really disappointing this season. And he's not the only one. Yeah. That's why Manchester United was 7th up until the weekend.
Yeah, you hear contrasting things on Sancho. So Damien Delaney, former Crystal Palace player, is a great analyst, and he's on with us, and it's his contention that Sancho was used to and thrived on intricate coaching and detail at Dortmund. When the ball is here, you go there. When this happens, that's your trigger to do this. This is how Sancho blossomed, and that doesn't seem to have been the Solskjaer way, and I'm not sure what he's getting from Rangnick, and so he's a bit lost. But then I suppose maybe more worryingly, because that's just a coaching issue, more worryingly, someone like Jamie Redknapp, every time I see Redknapp do coverage of United at the moment, he makes the point that he's not seeing any top end speed from Sancho. There's no ability to go by anyone, and you know, if you're not at that, then things are tricky. So we'll see how that goes. You jogged my memory by mentioning Elanga's pace being greater than Sancho's there. One other one, I don't even know to what extent United fans are that upset or otherwise. It's Lingard will be one of those players who thought he was going to get more minutes this season. We haven't seen him. Newcastle seem to be very interested. I wouldn't be shocked if Jesse Lingard was a slightly disaffected character at the moment and wondering why he came back.
I think it would be fair from Jesse's point of view if he felt that way. He left United a year ago. He went to West Ham. He did brilliantly there. He came back this season. It was his understanding that he would be featuring more prominently this season for Manchester United. It hasn't happened. He's been reduced to snatches. He's come on and done all right in some of the games. So I wouldn't be surprised if he felt very disappointed with how things have panned out for him, nor if he left the club to go on loan somewhere else for this season. And it's not a happy tale. His contract is running down, and as he showed at West Ham, he's clearly someone who can be a star in a team at the top end of the Premier League. And he's another one who's had a real roller coaster career at Manchester United. I can remember a couple of years ago, why aren't you being more critical of Lingard? He's a disgrace. He's got to go. And then he comes back into favour by doing well, and he's had some good times at United. But yeah, he's not going to be one of the players who's delighted. And another problem is that clubs like to stockpile players, partly because they don't want them to go to a rival. So it's all right for Anthony Martial to go to Sevilla and to pay his wages. But if Jesse Lingard was to go to a direct rival, let's be honest, someone like West Ham or Tottenham, they are a rival for Manchester United at the moment. That's Manchester United's level at the moment. That would be a threat as well. So there's always going to be unhappy players at any club, more so if the team's losing, more so if there's injuries. There's no shortage of them among some of the United players, but there are also some players who are, I know that Diogo Dalot, for example, feels that this is his best moment at Manchester United. The same for Raphael Varane. So we can talk about the negatives, but there are some positives as well.
Last one for you, Andy, and it's last but not least. Is Ronaldo a happy camper?
I don't know him personally, and I feel that I could argue both sides of him being good and bad for United pretty strongly. So I get all of this information given to me from what I would consider to be very good sources I've spent 30 years building up, people who I think are worth listening to. And I hear that United didn't have a clue that he was coming, and suddenly he comes in, so the tactics have got to be changed. And then I was in Bergamo when he scored. I was at Old Trafford when he scored against Villarreal, against Atalanta. Without his goals, I wouldn't be mentioning Atletico Madrid, Manchester United. And his statistics are still quite good. I hear some players really look up to him. I hear other players less so. So it's an issue which is going to go on and on and on.
Not least because Rangnick's not afraid to take him off, and we saw the conversation on the bench at Brentford. So is he happy? Is he enjoying his time at United? I wonder is an interesting question with Ronaldo.
Well, I don't think he expected United to be 7th in the league.
No.
I think he expected United to be challenging for the title. I'm glad that Rangnick felt big enough to bring him off, and B, that Ronaldo wasn't happy with being brought off. Wasn't a good look when the camera's focused in on it, but so what? He's not the first footballer who's angry when he comes off. The main thing is that he trained well the next day, which I'm told that he did. And from his perspective, I was told that United had a 2-0 lead against Villa a few days earlier and needed experienced players on the pitch to see out that lead, and failed to do that. So there was a case for keeping him on at Brentford. As it happened, the substitution was vindicated. Once again, there's two versions of the truth in football.
27 years ago, by the way, on this very evening, you were aghast like everyone else, and it was just the most remarkable moment. Were you there?
I was there, and it was a pre-internet age, and I just remember my phone being red hot for like a month afterwards. I was in London, I saw it. I didn't realise the significance of it. I went to a pub close to Sellers Park after the game, saw it again on TV and thought, whoa. And then the next morning, because I was doing a month's work placement at the Independent, so I was living in London for a month, my phone just did not stop and stop and stop. It was mental. And then a few years later, I drove to Marseille to interview Eric Cantona, and he said, look, can we just kind of do it properly tomorrow? So I had to spend another day in Marseille. And he gave me a great line in that interview, which when I asked him if he regretted what he'd done at Sellers Park, he said his only regret was that he didn't kick the hooligan harder. And when he said that to me, I thought, that's going to be picked up on. And it was. So, yeah, I was there. It was one for the television age, because when you were in the Arthur Waite stand, which housed the away fans, you're 80 or 90 metres from where it's actually happening. So I don't think anyone knew the magnitude of it. But when we saw the pictures, that's when I think, and the replays of it, that's when I think people saw the magnitude of it. And then the condemnation of it all, and the outrage, and people becoming very entrenched in their opinions. Hang him, get rid of him, this is disgraceful, or support him, he's attacked a hooligan. And yeah, busy times. I think it was probably my first big story where everything went just crazy for a month.
Yes. I will say the man in question would refute any claim he was a hooligan. So let's put that very much on the record. Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.